gentlemen, welcome to Anime Watch Club, a bi-weekly group discussion and review where the hosts of the WDYSA anime podcast nominate and vote on shows either we haven't seen or shows that will hopefully lead to a great discussion. On today's episode, the Biwa priest of the WDYSA anime podcast will be reviewing the 2022 film Inu-Oh. Let's meet today's host. First up, he's America's favorite Inu-Oh inspired interpretive stand-up comedian, as told by his stage name, Inu-Oh no. We got Jay. Jay, tell us a joke on the spot.
So, I was at the airport the other day, and did you guys know that my local airport was the one where they let the 9/11 terrorists through? Oh no, this joke is crashing. Let's get out of here. Get me out of here.
Fantastic.
I'm being yanked off stage by a comically large hook right now, guys. I'll see you later.
Get out of here. Next up, he is the self-proclaimed Inu-Oh, as he believes to be king of getting bitches. We got Johnny. Johnny, how's it going?
Listen, man. After what Miles said to me in that one episode, I think like all my risk is like it's like negative now. So like let's just move on.
You are not.
Oh no.
The dog is no longer in you. Next up, disgruntled
Never
by the
was.
lack of feline representation of this film, out of spite will be giving it no higher than a 5. We have Kat. Kat, how's it going?
Man, that you're right. You're right. This does grind my gears, but because I'm with you guys, I have to rate it without that prejudice. So
I appreciate that. And the next part, I got permission to say this, so our first moderator of the night, he actually appeared in the stage adaptation of this film as the reflection of the whale in the song The Whale. We have Miles. Miles, how's it going?
It's going really good. I thought this was gonna be meaner.
I asked if I could call you fat. I'm calling you
yeah,
the
but
whale.
it just sounds like I spend too much money on Magic the Gathering.
Oh, that is a good... Yeah, true. How's it going, though?
Oh, it's going quite well.
Good to hear. And Pat.
I've tried to make a pun out of Inu-Oh, but I just can't. I'm not going to. Won't make you guys suffer through that. So yeah, let's discuss this movie. Yeah, exactly. See that worked, but it like kind of sucked, right? And that's one of the ones I would have made too. But all right, let's talk about this movie that aired in May of 2022. So a relatively recent movie by Science Saru, based on a a regular novel as well.
Yes.
Which does exist. Yeah, novels exist. I forgot about those for a bit. But yeah, let's do our first impressions. Which, of course, with this being a movie, it's I'd say just go for the vibes maybe with what you discuss, just to avoid spoilers because it is a little spoilery of a movie. Miles, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I mean, I had high expectations coming into this from the people who had seen it and like raved about it, and then also it's Science Saru, which is one of my favorite studios. So I was definitely expecting like good things from this, and I got that. This movie slapped. It was like a really, really good time. So I would definitely recommend it to like, I think kind of anyone. I think it's just sort of an interesting experience. I could definitely see some people who it just might not be their vibe, but I think it's something that you should check out to like find out if it's your vibe or not, because it's a really good time.
Cool. All right. What about you, Kat?
I actually really enjoyed the show. When I first saw it, I was too sure about it, but I mean, when I first like looked at the summary of it, but when I started actually watching it, I knew I was in for a treat from the first, from the word go, just because of how well animated it was and how the sound design was. I loved it, and I would definitely recommend it.
You would? Perfect. All right. What about you, Johnny?
Well, for me, I'll say this movie definitely took me down a very exciting trip. And that trip involved a bunch of psychedelic mushrooms because that's how this movie looked like to me. And it has a very unique art style, so I think that could keep some people off of it. But I think I got used to it a little bit into the movie, and there were a lot of really good scenes in this movie, and it kept me quite engaged. So I definitely recommend this for somebody who's like into this sort of thing. But it's like if you're just like a regular anime watcher, it's probably not something for you because it's just way too much different from like just like the regular anime that we have.
Fair enough. And Jay, what about you?
Yeah, this movie is fantastic. I've seen it like 4 or 5 times, honestly. I've shown so many people this just because, like, I talk to people, I'm like, man, you probably love Inu-Oh. Like, if you're anybody who's just like kind of weird who is into like stage plays or musical theater or anything like that, or even just like Japanese history, because this is like a historical. The movie does have accurate historical context in some ways. I would definitely recommend this. I think that there's like a certain type of person who maybe if they're like super like normie, they might not like it, but like honestly, I want to believe better for people, and I think that this movie really does have something for most people. Like it follows the same kind of it has the beats of both like Disney movies in a way because of like the musical element as well as the curse. And it also reminds me a lot of like The Legend of Zelda in some ways with like the general vibes as well as like character design and stuff like that. Like it feels like a Legend of Zelda side quest that you would go on to help out Inu-Oh. And I really like a classical rather than like Breath of the Wild or whatever, like something from Majora's Mask, which kind of funny because there is an evil mask,
Yeah, I posted the
evil,
meme.
but evil mask. But by my vision, by my standards, the father is evil. But whatever. So yeah, needless to say, I would recommend this. This movie's great.
There you go. All right, and last but not least, Pete.
So this is my rewatch. The first time I saw this movie, I was very high on edibles. This time I was not high on edibles. So it was a different experience because I think I grasped onto some other things than I did the first time around. So this movie is absolutely fantastic. There's so many good things to say about it that we'll dive into. So I'm actually gonna give this 2 recommendations. I would recommend this not on edibles and also on edibles. This is a fantastic movie.
Very funny. Yeah, and on my end, I think I align more with Johnny's take that I wouldn't recommend this to absolutely everybody because I do think the art style might throw some people off. Like you said, I got used to it as well. I ended up really liking it by the end, especially with how the animation flowed and the set pieces in the movie really worked with the art style. I just I don't think you could recommend this to someone who just generally watches anime very casually. Like this is a very artsy kind of movie, which of course you should expect from Science Saru if you know the scene. But I don't know. I wouldn't just recommend this to anybody on the street. I wouldn't just walk up to someone and say, "Hey, this is a really cool movie. You're gonna love it." I would definitely more align this with someone who likes things that are artistic that make them think that maybe they really like rock music as well or something along those lines. Then they might be willing to give this movie more of a chance. But I really liked it. I'm really glad I watched it. It was a wild ride and really not too many complaints. I think that it delivered on everything that it was trying to do. So I would still recommend it to like our listeners. But you should watch it. I would say. But yeah, all right, that wraps up our spoiler-free section. So yeah, go watch this movie. Come back in like an hour and a half, and come listen to us discuss it. So yeah, well, who has their first talking point? I mean, if we start somewhere, it's got to be the music, right? Like how incredible that was. I don't know how you guys felt, but like I think Pete posted the commentary about like some of the director's inspirations for the music that was involved. Jimi Hendrix was one of the names mentioned, and that's one of my favorite artists from way back in the day, and I loved it. I could totally feel the way that the electric guitar almost had like the acoustic effect to it, which God, what was the instrument called again? Sorry,
Biwa.
but
Biwa.
Biwa. Thank you. All right. Yeah, the Biwa almost sounded like the guitar style that Jimi Hendrix really used to play with. So I absolutely adored it. I'm curious to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the music quite a bit as well. I love the way that they captured a modern vibe with the contemporary instruments of the time. Like you said, the allusions to other musicians that will come later was very interesting. Like I definitely enjoyed the allusions to Jimi Hendrix, but also like it's not listed as a complete inspiration from what Pete said, I don't think, but I feel like the real Michael Jackson vibes that Inu-Oh gives, especially during that first performance whenever he's like dancing and shit. Like it was just awesome. I loved that so much. Which is to say that like Abu-chan, the VA for Inu-Oh, who people may recognize from the Oshinoko ED Mephisto, it just kills it. Like their singing is fantastic the entire time, as well as their voice acting, but the singing is just spectacular. Like it got me into Queen Bee slash Abu-chan, and I can't be more thankful for that because pretty much every song that I've heard from them I've enjoyed. I would say, and Inu-Oh is like a big part of that for me.
I was about to mention that Abu-chan is from Queen Bee. I didn't even realize Queen Bee was more than one person. I thought that they were just Queen Bee. Well, who have done, anime fans might recognize them from Dororo's opening, Devilman Crybaby. They did a song in, apparently, a couple other things too. Like they're very famous in
Yeah.
Japanese pop culture for those that are not as not as big weebs as we are. But yeah, go ahead, Pete. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say I really love the inspirations that they had in the show, and you can see it like really. I feel like they didn't like try to hide it, especially for like Western fans. Like the first time that Inu-Oh is dancing, he does the Michael Jackson thing, where it's like, oh, that's clearly Michael Jackson. And then towards the end of like the performance, Inu-Oh has like the pink eyeliner, which reminded me of like David Bowie. And then when I did like some research, I was like, oh yeah, the inspirations are Michael Jackson and David Bowie. It's like funny how that works out. And then Pat said earlier, the Jimi Hendrix was like, I felt like how they included it with this like traditional, but you still had that like electric guitar kind of feel going with it. It was absolutely incredible. I also feel like I got some vibes. I don't know if you've ever seen like the Wembley performance of Queen when they do like what's it called? The Under Pressure, and it's like 80,000 people. That's how I felt like The Whale was too. Just like everybody's just like immersed in this performance, and I feel like they captured that really well. And I feel like they picked really prominent like artists to feature these characters as in the movie, and they just killed it. So I mean, props to Science Saru. They're one of the best like studios in the game. Yusa is one of the best directors in the game, and I thought just how they implemented it all together was just near perfect.
No,
This
go
was
ahead.
actually his last project with Science Saru. This was what he went out on.
I mean, he owns the company, so
Yeah,
I don't
but
think
like
he's
he's
done
just
with
not.
it.
Yeah, well, no, I think he's just not doing anything else with them anymore. Like I think he's pretty much retiring after this. Because that's what he left on good terms. They said that he left on good terms with them, and
Oh,
that he's just
interesting.
not going to
I did
work
not
with
know
them
that.
anymore.
Well,
Yeah, I
I
think.
hope he enjoys his retirement, and I also hope that he doesn't and he comes back because I love almost everything he does.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he made the series literally to do an episode of Adventure, the studio rather, to do an episode of Adventure Time, and then we got all this out of it. Like, I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, they did Devilman Crybaby to Tommy Galaxy. They might have been Madhouse then, but like, he's just done so much stuff that like means a lot to me. But I don't have like the musical knowledge for like I couldn't pick up on the Jimi Hendrix homages or anything like that just because I'm not super familiar with Jimi Hendrix. Once it's pointed out to me, it makes a ton of sense. But the thing that really struck me was the Queen and Freddie Mercury stuff. I feel like their last performance, especially with like the water and like just the way that it sounded, and I was like, this feels like it's Queen. And so when Pete sent his like list of things, I think they were like towards the end, and I was like, "Oh, can we see it, or am I dumb?" And I was like, "Oh no, oh, there it is." So,
We got there.
but I really, I mean, I don't know. I had so much fun with the music. It's not even like my favorite style of music or anything, but like I think it just fits the vibe they're going for so well. With you have like the electric guitars with all the traditional Japanese instruments and stuff, and it's just a good way to like show the attitude that the group has. That Inu-Oh and Tomona have. So I had a great time with the music. I think it's fantastic. Kat?
So I want to throw another like reference in that I saw, especially during the first performance with the Biwa player. I I saw the way that he moved when he was playing the Biwa, and the first thing I got was Slash from Guns N' Roses, just from how his how his head was moving, from how his body was moving, and the actual solo that was going on while he was doing that. The first thing I thought was Slash, and it just absolutely it got me hyped for the rest of the movie. And I just like after that first part of the movie, I was glued to the TV screen. I was engaged. Yeah, this was definitely an amazing film for like music wise, just like from having the Biwas going on along with the modern music, just kind of split in between.
I like the cockiness of Tomoa being like a lead in like a band, because like the first time he meets Inu-Oh, he starts playing the guitar and Inu-Oh's like, "This is good." He's like, "Yeah, I know." Like, you don't have to tell me that this is good. I know this is good. I was like, yeah, that's the cockiness you need in a front man. It's like, hell yeah, I rock. Like, this is great.
There was another scene that like showed that vibe too, where he like didn't want to go to dinner, and that just sort of like he was just playing his biwa instead of like going to the dinner. That's just sort of reminded me of like because like you have this impression of like front people of like these big bands just being like too cool for school in like every way, where they're like supposed to be dining with their equivalent of like the president or whatever, right? Like with the shogun, and he's just like, nah, I'm just gonna go over there and play guitar because I'm freaking awesome. It's just the characters they're just cool. I feel like they fit that feeling so well. They embody it really, really well.
Yeah, I think they just really captured the vibe of being rock stars really well. I loved the illusions like in the on the bridge show that they did at first, like where they have like the guy just breathing fire for the pyrotechnics, and they have like
Yes.
the bouncers holding everybody back and stuff like that. Like I think that they just watching the performances in this movie made me want musicians nowadays to do better. Like you don't really I feel like I would never see something like what happens in like The Whale in real life. I know that it's asking a bit much to get them to like do all that, but like come on, at least try. Like do I have to go to like a Beyonce concert or something to see all that? Is that what she does? I don't know, man.
Taylor
Like
Swift puts
I
on
was
a
just
real
say,
good
she
show, I
sits
have
at
to
a
say.
table. She
I
sits at a table.
she did not sit at a table at the show I went to, but that was admittedly a while ago.
Fair enough. Not
Um,
to disparage Taylor Swift, by the way. I don't want the Swifties
We
on
loved our
me.
Swifties.
I do like Taylor Swift, but she also do be sitting at a table though.
Speaking of the visuals of the movie, I also really like the representation of like you seeing the world from Tomo's point of view, just from how like he was listening to the things going around them, and it kind of showed you like kind
Oh
of like the
yeah.
Yeah,
barrels and
that
then the rice inside the barrels, and then the birds, stuff like that. Like that was really well crafted, in my opinion. How did you guys feel about
I
that?
love that. Like the rain scene at the beginning, whenever he first gets blinded and he's like holding his hand out and stuff like that. Like, I think that that was a great way to like kind of show us how he views, quote unquote, views the world, as well as like just being like a very visually unique scene. I enjoyed like the chalk drawings they used
Hmm.
with that as well.
I agree. I think it was a unique way. I'm used to like when you see the world from like a blind person's perspective, they do like the Toph thing from
Mhm.
Avatar: The Last Airbender. If y'all have seen that, where
Yes.
it's like, but this I think adding color to it is something I had never seen before, and I thought that was such a neat because things sound different and like and like that's I just thought that was really cool. And then we also get to see the world, I think, from Inu-Oh's perspective, like from the mask a couple of times.
Mhm.
And I think that's really cool too. I just think they did a great job with character perspective in fleshing out these two characters in such a great way.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why did the sword kill his dad and stuff at the beginning, and obviously blind him by accident or on purpose? Who knows? Really, like I don't know.
So,
I didn't really get it.
so that sword is actually part of the modern, like the actual Japanese regalia or imperial regalia. It's called the Grasscutter Sword, and in legend, it is a sword that is wielded by a god, and it can also like control the wind and stuff like that. So it's just like a it's like a Dark Souls ass weapon, more or less. It's a relic. We actually don't even know what it looks like in real life because whenever they do the coronation and stuff, they just keep it in a box with the other regalia. Nobody gets to see it besides the emperor because it's super important in Shinto.
Yeah. So think about how in like Indiana Jones and the Ark of the Covenant, sort of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
more or
it's like
less.
that sort of thing for them.
Yeah. No, I was just trying to understand, because like I figured we'd get an answer, like because we kind of get an answer as to what happened or why the Inu-Oh's father and his guardian, whatever you want to call him, like what happened with him by the end of the movie, and we didn't really get an answer for what the sword was, other than the fact, like you said, it was like this mystical god wielded weapon. Like, why did it pick him versus like with Inu-Oh? It's like we find out, yeah, no, the demon mask Majora, whatever, sat there and picked
My
Inu-Oh.
yeah, Majora, I love it. My understanding is, and Jay might know, so Jay, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the movie, I think, understandably expects you to have more of a background than I did on the Heki
I think that
Monogatari.
yeah, I think that it's something that like Japanese, like since it's a movie made for a Japanese audience, like Japanese people are just going to like know for the most part. I would assume know what the Grasscutter Sword is.
Yeah, it's like their Arthurian legend is sort of like the equivalent, I guess I would
Yeah, it's like
make.
it's like a British person knowing about like the crown jewels or
Yeah,
something
okay.
like that.
And so they go looking for this like lost treasure, and the audience knows what the treasure is, and they expect the treasure to be powerful and maybe curse them. And so like that explanation isn't needed because they're just assuming that you have that knowledge, would be my guess.
I'll say it's kind of cool that prior to the movie being released, they did Hike Monogatari, which kind of did like a backstory of like a Hike wartime like storyline. So I personally, I think Miles saw it too, but I thought like I saw the show before seeing the movie, and I had some like background going into the movie, which I thought was
That's how
really
I
cool.
remember Biwa.
Yeah,
because Biwa's name is Biwa.
Biwa is Biwa in the show. So, yeah, I thought that was just like a really cool. I don't know if like they did Hike Monogatari for Inu-Oh, but it's cool that like those parallels exist. That if you want more backstory in the Hike storylines, that there is a story out there, and it's done by the same studio.
Yeah, I
Pretty
think
cool,
they must
actually.
just be fans of it because like different directors did it, and like lots of
Mm-hmm.
people do the Hike Monogatari in like different ways. There's like a lot of retellings of it. Like the book that this is sourced from is a retelling of the Hike Monogatari from the the tales that Inu-Oh and stuff are telling, and so it's like a more avant-garde sort of thing. Like I was trying to think of something to like compare it to, and the only thing I could think about is if you took like Hamilton, right, which is like American history but with hip hop, but instead of it just being the story, you were like hearing the story of someone telling the story of the American Revolution like as Hamilton, which is just something that I thought was like a really interesting. I don't know. It was just it. I don't know why it blew my mind so much, but there's just like one extra layer to this, and it's like the fact that this story takes place in like 1300 or 1400 or something, and they're telling a legend that like I guess as an American we have like 200 years of history or something, like 300 years of history, and like they have this story that's like 700 years old where they're telling this other story that's like 300 years old from the story that was 700. It was just like too much for me. I was like, oh, everything's so old. Oh my god.
Yeah, and then that's like not even considered like ancient history for them.
Yeah.
It's just like this is actually in like the latter half of what was going on in our country.
I guess like I was gonna say like maybe we should talk about like what do we think about the movie's story like in general, because I think like this like Miles said, is like I think this movie expects you to have prior knowledge about a lot of things, and like so I guess like maybe if you know more about it, you'll understand more about it, enjoy it more. So I guess like maybe we'll see like how that affects our enjoyment of it.
I think you're not necessarily wrong, but to be quite honest with you, whenever I first watched this movie, I was not even aware that it was a real like time. Like wasn't aware that Don no Uro was a thing. I wasn't aware that the Hike were a thing, like in real life. Like I was just treating it like it was like background fluff in a fantasy movie, more or less. And I still loved the movie, like, and have what like knowing about it has improved my enjoyment of it a bit, I would think, just because it's like, oh, that's cool that it's accurate, but I don't think it's required knowledge at all, in my opinion. Just like to enjoy like Beauty and the Beast, you don't have to have like background knowledge of pre-revolution France, you know.
Yeah, I guess that's like the difference between like the East and the West, because like for me, a lot of like our stories come from like true like or like well true highly exaggerated but like historical events. So like a lot of like stories from like I guess this is Japanese, but like Japanese and Chinese, like there's a lot of
Sorry,
like
by we do you mean the East or the West? Because you are
Yeah,
Oh,
I was
well,
wondering the
well,
same
you're an
thing.
Asian
so
you're an
like
Asian person
so
living in Canada. Sorry.
so like from like an Asian point of view, like we have a lot of like stories based on like true events, where it was like stuff like Mulan and stuff like that.
Got it.
Where so like for me, looking at the art style of the movie and like just looking at like the background and stuff, I just assumed it was based on a real story because of just like the way that it's presented to me. But I guess like that's where like my cultural background is different from you guys, because it's like a lot of stories are like I guess they're not completely based in fiction, but they're like very much like a product of fiction, like Shakespeare and stuff like that.
Or SpongeBob.
I mean, SpongeBob might be real. Who knows?
True.
I think this
True.
movie did a good job at sort of just laying out the groundwork for what they're trying to portray. Even if you're not like familiar with like the shogunate era of Japan, I think they do a really good job of you're going into it with no knowledge that the shogunate is this very important political person and what these stories are trying to represent. I think that like they use a lot of the visuals, especially with like the war aspect and the whale, that they're talking about like a war strategy as like it was it like 1,000 dolphins are pretending to be a whale, and that's sort of like the army of the Hike, that they're pretending to be this more giant fleet than they actually are. I think like those types of stories you don't need a lot of background, because you could just insert X army or X country and it kind of tell the exact same story. So to me, I felt like I had a good understanding of what they were trying to tell, regardless of me seeing like Hike Monogatari before, or having any prior knowledge of like historical Japan in general.
So I didn't really have I don't really have any reference for like for ancient history in Japan, especially not like modern ancient, I guess is the thing, that type of history in Japan. So I thought it was entertaining regardless because of the way that the story was told, the way that cinematography was put together with like all of the seeing some things from a blind person, seeing some things from Inu-Oh's perspective, like just all of that going together was a good enough story where I didn't really care about the actual history that was behind it. I cared about the story, and I think that is where I think that's where I felt like it shined, because there's a lot of there's some shows or some American shows that like need you to care about like the history of things, but this one is not one of them. Like I think Hamilton is a really good comparison, because if you've never heard anything about American history, I'm sure that you would actually still like Hamilton because of the charisma of the actors and the charisma of the charisma of the story itself.
You might like it more even.
Yeah.
Ooh, shots fired.
Hamilton only needed one shot
Literally.
fired at him.
I was about to say. Too soon. Too soon.
Wow, spoilers.
Yeah, really.
There's a spoiler alert, Aaron Burr wins. I guess like comparing this to another show where like historical context mattered a lot. I think it's weird because because this is so steeped in history, it's like a lot easier for me to pick the historical things together. I'm like, okay, there was this battle between these people, they have like a treasure. I think I like slightly got what the treasure was wrong, but I understood it was like a powerful relic and stuff, and like I can like piece these things together. Whereas if something is more of like, I don't want to say like artistic, but like a less, I'm trying to talk about Akira, okay? And how and how and, and how Akira is this like response to the culture of like Japanese youth in the 80s and stuff, and like I didn't know any of that, but I don't think there's like a way to pick up on that from Akira without having I don't think that I could have watched Akira and then not have someone explain to me like why it's the like a symbolic of like a counterculture that was going on in Japan in the 80s. Like
She's the
There
American
were literal
Akira.
protests in the
Greece.
streets.
But man, I don't know what it's a response to. I don't know Japanese history. If I knew Japanese history, then like sure, but what I'm saying is it's like more of an allusion to that as opposed to being direct like Inu-Oh was. That's what I was trying to say before I couldn't, and then made Jay laugh because I'm too dumb to think of the word illusion. But like that's why the historical stuff didn't really miss me, even though I didn't know it, because I think it's just very, it's so directly tied to the plot that I think you can put it together more or less. I'm glad we got there.
We did it.
Okay.
And by we, I mean
Reading
you.
is hard.
And a little bit of Jay.
Yeah,
I have a talking point if nobody else has one.
hit me.
All right, cool. So I guess we're doing this during Pride Month, and then I wanted to have some form of like representation talk about Inu-Oh itself. Just that like Inu-Oh, the voice actor Avu-chan is non-binary. They do Inu-Oh's voice actor in Japanese. The English voice actor Joshua Waters is non-binary for the English version, and then the English voice actor for Tomoa is a trans woman. And I felt that not only is the representation of the show there, but also outside of it is really important. So I want to get you guys' thoughts on that, and I guess if you had any thoughts on just like the representation of the voice actors or what they portrayed in the movie, and if it was like important to you or not, or if you found it interesting, etc., etc.
Did find the representation, and like I just learned about the voice actors, but the representation of the characters in the show, it did feel a little bit almost like they were hinting more at not necessarily a romantic or sexual relationship with it, but definitely a bonding between both Inu-Oh and Tomo in a more how do I put this, in a non-straight male like situation, because of the
Yeah.
because like of all the references of in the Biwa priests in the Biwa priests, like I guess sanctuary or something, where they were talking about how Tomo is dressing like a prostitute, and how like he moves so different, almost like there were some references of like, I felt like some references of like old school Elvis versus a lot of the acts of the time, where Elvis was moving more seductively than a lot of the other rock acts, kind of like that, where it was like the traditionalist versus Elvis doing all of the stuff that he was doing. I felt like that was almost like Akira, where it was a bit of a counterculture between the two.
Yeah, so what I picked up on was like because P posted some stuff, and like I guess the director said that they wanted to leave the relationship between Inu-Oh and Tomina is sort of like open to like, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even think, it never crossed my mind that it would potentially be romantic, and I'm not saying that like that reading's wrong. It just didn't hit that for me. But what I did, I mean, and what I did notice, what the movie goes out of its way to slap you in the face with, is that Tomina is way like doesn't conform to gender norms, and that's part of how he does the act and stuff, and like what makes him so cool, and just adds to that sort of rock star vibe. And I thought that was really good, and I like the casting of non-binary actors to portray such a role. Like I think that's really good to do. So I like that. Does anyone else have thoughts on that? Because I wanted to ask if anyone initially read the relationship as romantic, since that was apparently a potentially open-ended sort of thing.
Kind of.
Like, I think I don't know if I read it as romantic necessarily at first, but like definitely like soulmates, even if it wasn't like romantic necessarily. Because like,
I got you.
how
I
else
feel
would you describe somebody like spending like 600 years wandering around looking for somebody in the afterlife? Like, especially whenever we know for a fact that people in this setting can just move on whenever they're at peace, right?
true.
Like, if Inu-Oh really wanted to, he could have just, or they could have just went to the afterlife and lived in fucking paradise or whatever, Shinsenkyo or whatever it is in Shinto. So, like, I don't know. I think that choosing not to have like eternal paradise or whatever to go look for your boy, that's
That is pretty
yeah.
intense. Yeah, that's a good point. And that might just be some of my like naturally ingrained like I don't know. Sometimes I need to be hit over the head
I
with
get that.
gay romantic relationships just because of social,
Hmm.
what's it called when they socialize you,
Societal norms.
socialization, societal norm, things like that. So I definitely think that that's a really good point, that if you're willing to just be an aimless spirit for a millennia waiting for someone, you probably like them a
Whoa, it was
little
only
more than
it's only 600 years, bro.
oh, okay, never mind, point over.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just roommates, like.
Yeah, they were history will call them roommates. One thing that I do want to talk about is, what did you guys take away from, because I'm unsure how I feel about the way that they handle the two characters at the end, the sort of clamp down that society does on their culture, right? So, they get satanic panicked a little bit, where, the the feds decided that they were too cool, and they had to shut them down. And so Inu-Oh very begrudgingly is like, okay, I guess I'll just do this and keep on keeping on. And Tomina is like, yeah, you can kill me. That, I don't know. What did you guys think about that? Like, were you disappointed in Inu-Oh at all, or did you like? It's weird because like that's the correct decision, right? But like, I I did feel some, I don't know, like solidarity. Like, I thought it was brave of Tomina to like stand up from that, even if it led to his death.
This is probably one of my main complaints with this movie, is that it felt a little short. It felt like it didn't finish. I was kind of surprised when it finished. Like I expected there to be more. Uh, I didn't expect it to end the way it did. I guess like you mentioned, Tomona standing up for it versus Inu-Oh sucking it up and just cutting, saving face, whatever, saving his life. Like you said, the correct decision for sure, like 100% of the time. However, it's a movie. You don't have to make the right decision, right? He's not a real person. You know what I mean? Like I would have expected for him to either have some sort of, maybe not redemption, but chance to show that obviously he's not okay with just conforming, because it's kind of what I don't know. Maybe that's not what the whole movie was about, but it felt like most of the movie was about him slowly transforming into someone that he wants to be or what he thinks society wants him to be. I don't know. Wait, maybe that's the whole point though, is that he finally becomes what he wants by forming to society. But then he leaves his soulmate behind and still wanders for him afterwards, anyways. Too, like so that's I don't know that was my one of my main gripes with the movie. It felt like there were very chaotic moments. The set pieces were incredible, right? But then there were just so many things that were unanswered. Surprise, surprise! I don't like that, but especially in this case, like you brought up, it felt to me like it was an unfinished character arc or moment. Kat, what about you?
In that situation, I don't think either choice was wrong. I don't think because I don't think Inu-Oh was wrong for saying, "Hey, I don't want my friend to die," because that was the options presented to him. He was presented, "Hey, you can not, and we'll behead your friend. If not, then we won't behead your friend." That was kind of like what he was basically trying to say. But you can never see him again. That's the type of thing that he was saying, and I feel like at that point there's no real right answer. I think that the choice of the Biwa priest was wrong? Yes and no. I don't think it was wrong because he was standing up for what he liked. He was standing up for what he loved. I do think it was wrong because he had an out, and he was already told that he was gone. And I get that you're passionate about something, and I guess red rose-colored eyes will always color everything red. But it was just so I desperately wanted him to just say, "I am Tomoichi," and honestly, I feel like, but I don't think that would be a good show. I don't think that would have been a good ending for me because it would have felt sour. But I do think that both of them made a good decision, but I don't think there was a right decision to make.
Yes, for me, first of all, is nobody gonna talk about how like what a badass way for Tomoya to die? Man was playing it until his death. They literally had to
Oh, that's
chop his
cool.
arms off to stop him. First of all, the authorities are idiots because why would they let him keep the Biwa? Unless they unless they wanted that to happen, which I guess fair enough.
Because it's
Like,
cool, man.
yeah, well, they're stupid still, but like either way, it's like what a banging way to go. But also, like I feel like a person like Tomoya, like you gotta have some goddamn pride in yourself. You have a massive ego to do what he does. So I feel like to him, like the worst thing that could happen to him would be for somebody to tell him, no, you can't do this. And so like I feel like in his mind, not being able to do what he wants to do is worse than death. So he chose to die. And I think as for Inuo's decision, again, it's like as we said, like he in that situation he made the right decision because there's literally nothing else he could have done. It's like okay, he doesn't listen to the Emperor. Okay, he just gets himself killed then. Like his like Tomoyo was gonna die anyways. But I think this I think there's also a bit of historical context maybe because it's like a lot of stories in the past were created to, like serve a purpose. It's like Shakespeare was often like the only reason they let Shakespeare plays be played was that they had to change a lot of stuff because the emperors and stuff didn't want people to like rally up against like the leading powers or whatever. So I'm thinking maybe part of like the reason why Inu-Oh decided to listen to the emperor was kind of like to tell people, hey, like listen to authority, something like that. Again, I don't know, but for me, maybe that's something. I mean, Pete, you disagree with me. Maybe you always disagree with me. So what's different?
Well, I legit think Inyo did not have a choice in his decision. I think the decision is mostly just on Tomoa. Like Inyo is like, your friend dies or he doesn't. You get the pick, and then he's like, well, I like my friend a lot, so I'm going to choose that he lives. I don't think like his like choice has like a meaning, but I think Tomoa's does, because since the beginning of the movie, we see that in his like village, his dad states like, yeah, we're divers. We've always been divers, and Tomo's like always following whatever like the stipulations of the situation he's in. He's a diver. He's always going to be a diver. When he has the choice to change his name, he goes with the Biwa priest. He changes his name because of that. Like he changes based off of, like, who he is at the time. But then when he finally meets Inu-Oh, it's when he starts making decisions for himself, I feel like. And so that's when it gets to the end where it's like a live free or die thing where he chooses to be the person that he is instead of conforming to what the people are telling him. And I thought that was like a really good message of just like, while you go through life, you might have to like pick situations where you have to do something, even though that's not what you want to do. But then when he finally gets to the end, he gets to make the decision that either he continues to be the person he wants to be, or he faces the repercussions. And in this case, it was death. So I thought that was like a really cool message. I think I feel like this movie does like representation really well. I think that's like the case for a lot of people going through that as like, like trans or non-binary or gay or something like that, where you get to choose the path you take. You could, think back like in the 90s, like don't ask, don't tell or something like that in the army. Like that was a thing. So like you can conform to whatever it is, or you can be the person who you are. And I think that's kind of the message I took away from it, which is why I really enjoyed Tomo as a character at the end.
Okay. But to be, I would argue that, like, so like in Inu-Oh's situation, he could have either chosen to like perform, like he couldn't perform his own shows.
He could
wasn't
from the
allowed-
stories, yeah.
Yeah, it's like he wasn't allowed to be himself, but he chose to suck it up. Unlike Tomoya, who decided to go against it, and he
it's
died.
different because his choices would lead to his friend dying. Inu-Oh didn't know Tomo was going to run off and do the stories and get himself killed.
Okay.
He didn't know that.
But I guess, like, in that situation, do you think the Emperor would have killed Inu-Oh as well if he just said, "No, I'm going to perform my plays"?
Yes,
Whether you like it or
100%.
not?
Yeah, he's
So
he's a dictator, like for sure.
So I do think Inu-Oh did have a choice. I think he made the right choice, but he did have a choice. So like, I think I disagree with you there.
Well, if you had the choice of like either I kill your friend or I don't kill your friend, I don't think that's a choice. I think you choose don't kill your friend.
Well, you just said there, if you had to choose.
I mean, technically it's a choice, but it's not. It's like, would you rather have $1 million or a penny? It's like, yeah, you technically have a choice, but you know what you're going to pick. Like,
I would pick a penny.
Yeah,
so
that's because you're an idiot, Miles. You didn't know what illusion meant.
If this kind of decision happened in like a Disney movie, what Inu-Oh would do was he would escape, and then he would escape with Tomoya, then run off into the wild or whatever.
Well,
but this isn't a Disney.
This is in hindsight because Inu-Oh didn't know that Tomo was going to do that when he made.
He
his
honestly
decision.
might not have ever known that Tomoya died, which is
that is also true.
Again.
Yeah,
because we don't see it. We don't get to see that, which I thought.
Well, that's the whole point. It's supposed to be a gray area, open-ended, like make your own adventure type of thing, because we get something about it at the end with them reuniting 600 years later in Tokyo or Kyoto, wherever they are.
I also think there's something about how Inu-Oh goes on to be a very successful traditional dancer, and no one remembers. Like I don't know. I think
the size of like a planet.
Think that's just there's something so tragic about that, right? Because I think the implication is that like if they had been allowed to continue doing what they were doing, they certainly would have been remembered, right? Like I don't know. That's my read on it. I
think that's the idea.
Yeah,
it's sort of like I'm glad that they have that little spirit thing, because I think if they didn't, it would just be like a bit of a downer. And like I like the slightly more hopeful ending. It's good for me. Yeah.
Ending is both meant to show that, like, meant to kind of bring it up a bit, and also show that they were confined a bit by the time that they were born in, constrained by it, because that's like a big part of the movie in general, is like different eras and the passage of time. And at the end there, whenever they meet again in like the present day, and they're finally allowed to like actually like be together and perform together and do their own and do what they want to do rather than like what they have to do, that's when they're truly happy. I think that that's a really powerful way to end it.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that.
All right, Miles, why don't you start us off with your closing thoughts and your final score for Inu-Oh the movie?
Yeah, I really liked Inu-Oh. I thought it was a lot of fun. I had a great time. People should watch this movie. They did their final performance during a solar eclipse. That will never not be fucking awesome. That is really cool. This movie is really good. I'm gonna give it a 9. I really like it. People, please watch this movie. It's good.
Very
Watch
enthusiastic.
watch Inu-Oh.
All right, Kat, what about you?
I love this movie. It is definitely one of those movies that if anybody would, if anybody is on the fence about watching it, I would implore you to watch it because it is a great movie from the cinematography to the music. It is a great ride all the way throughout, and it will keep you engaged the whole entire show. And I also like that it actually has a decently happy ending. So for me, I think I'm going to give it, what was it? I think it was my 16th 10 I've given it here.
Ooh.
Um so yeah. Watch the movie. I love it. It's a masterpiece.
Nice. All right, Johnny, what about you?
So for me, yeah, I think I agree with like the things that people like about the show in general. It's just that for me, there's like quite a few things that I don't like. There's one where it's like, again, the art style. I understand its appeal, but to me, it's just there are some aspects where it's great, like during like the musical acts. But I think like during a lot of like the normal scenes, there's a lot of parts where I'm just thinking like, I wish this was just around like a normal anime. So, and apart from that, I would say that the movie really picks up around the middle where like they have their first musical act. And I think before that, a lot of it's pretty dull. So for me, I think because of that, I'm gonna have to give it a 7. I think it's a very good 7, but it's just that like there's a lot of things that I think would be off-putting for people, and especially like if you're the kind of person that like drops a show after the first episode if you think it's bad, there's gonna be some people that like watch like the first 20 minutes of this movie and get bored. So yeah, that's gonna be my score.
Fair enough. Jay, what about you?
Yeah, obviously I really enjoy this movie because I've seen it like 5 or 6 times or something like that on my own free will, which
It's
is a
only been
very
out for how long has it been out? Like a year?
something like that.
Yep.
Also,
Yeah.
I've only seen it like 2 months ago or something like that, so I've watched it in a very
Okay.
short amount of time as well. Like, I really enjoy this movie. I love the music in it. I liked the art style. Um, I do agree that the setup is a bit slow, but I enjoyed it for what it was, like just like kind of the traditional Japanese storytelling aspect of it. It reminded me, like I said, like I got huge Zelda vibes from it in a lot of ways, just because like that's obviously linked to like the traditional Japanese folklore storytelling and stuff like that. I also enjoyed that it was like educational and like last but not least, like the movie just the voice actors just kick ass. I loved it a lot. So for me personally, this is a 9 out of 10.
Wow, I was expecting a 10 from you, Jay. I have edited it on my sheet. I,
There you go. All right,
Do you make
Pete.
prediction for everyone or just
I
him?
do. I was off on you too, Johnny. I thought you were going to give it an 8.
Mm.
Pete, what about you?
Yeah, this movie just like absolutely solidifies like Science Saru is an S tier studio. Yusa is an S tier director. I thought the score was amazing. I thought the animation was incredible at some moments. There was like a scene where they go from like the theater performance into like a warship battle of like watercolors on like a scroll for a little bit, which was just like holy fuck, like this is insane. And then like back to like the performance. I thought the animation with this movie was just absolutely incredible. One knock, I did think it was a little short. I think that this movie probably could have been like another 10 minutes and could have flushed out a little bit more, but that's like my really only complaint with this movie. I thought it did exactly what it wanted to do in the time that it was allowed, and I thoroughly enjoyed it whether I was on edibles or not. I'm gonna give this a solid ass 9.
Okay, you got a solid ass 9.
Solid ass 9.
There you go. All right. And for me, I agree with Pete and a couple of others as well that it felt like it could have been longer. It had different, like I don't know, what was it, like an hour and 40 minutes as well.
Yep.
So it's not like they ran out of time, so to speak. That and I feel like they have their own creative reign and choices at Science Saru, especially this director. He gets to do what he wants. I feel like at this point, that was where my main frustration is, and I actually really like the opposite of what Miles said, which would be like if the movie just ended after he says I agree, and then we never get to see whether they actually reunite or in any way. I think that that would have been really fun too, because you could also always theorize about it. You could also still have that open ended, unknown answer. But I don't know, I wanted to. I just wanted the themes to make what was the theme of the movie? What is the message of the story that was told? That's what I didn't understand because you have the
Being
two contrasting
yourself,
characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he
expressing
doesn't be
yourself.
but he doesn't be himself at
Even
the
if you
end.
die,
Yeah.
He conforms and doesn't
Yeah,
be
and
himself.
yeah, but that's when everything like the movie goes out of its way to tell you like yeah, and after he did that, then like he basically vanished from the public view and shit and history itself. Like if he would have been able to continue being himself, then it would have been better for him.
Yeah. It's basically saying, hey, these are the two choices that you could make. This is what happened to one person. They are forgotten from time, and this is what happened to the other person. They died free.
Right, but so that's anti what the point is though. They died not being themselves, or they died eventually, but not, they lived
But
longer,
they
but they weren't
lived
themselves.
and but the point is they
So
lived in
yeah,
misery
it's not
basically.
even just be yourself. It's let other people be themselves. It's probably not a threat to you. It's like good to do that,
Yeah.
right? Because like you have this thing that everyone loves, and it's taken away from people because of the shogunate and his desire to like conform the stories and everything. You can like my thought on it is that like it's you should there's a twofold lesson, right? It's be yourself, express yourself, and do that. And then also, if you are not that person, right? Like if you are like, don't be threatened. Don't try to stop other people from doing that. Is because the people who do that are villainized in this to various extents.
Rob DeSantis is the shogunate.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Sure.
kind of
I
who
don't know.
took place
Either
in
way,
Florida.
yeah, he's the guy in Florida, and we can talk about that later. Yeah, I don't know. I just that's where my frustration was though, because like if the message is to be yourself or uh to leave other people alone, then I you would have thought that they would have won in the end, which I guess they do because they end up reunited together. But
Which is why I like that scene, by the way,
yeah.
because it's like because imagine if it was like he was himself and then first off, being yourself sometimes does like even like innocuously does lead to that exact punishment, you know, historically and in modern day. But it's just nice to have them get to be happy at the end. Is I just think that's an important part of it,
fair.
one way or the other.
I think that's fair. But yeah, so that is the main problem I had, and I do agree with what Johnny said as well. I was intrigued at the beginning, but I was also wondering when it was going to really start ramping up, and it does in the middle. The middle act of the movie, the set pieces do go on for a very long time. So if you don't love the music, you might not like it, but I did, so I loved it. I really enjoyed the set pieces, the visuals, like others have discussed, were so sick. The transitions between scenes or between shots, maybe, it was incredible what they were doing. So for me, this is a very strong 8 out of 10 movie, and so yeah, that adds up to an average of an 8.67 from us. So that's pretty high on our watch score list. Also surprised when I was looking at the mal for this at 7.82 average. Like again, I think that may be partly due to people's like maybe not homophobic, but like anti that kind of art style or storytelling or I maybe that mixed with also like I said earlier, I think like to a very normal person who just wants to watch a show and not think about it or watch a movie and not be challenged, I think that they would find this to be difficult to watch or not as enjoyable. I think that's how it impresses on me, at least, especially because it only has like 5,000 ratings apparently on Mal, or 5,000 users even, right? So
It was in theaters for
like
a day here. So it's like and they just got on Hulu, but
right, but like wouldn't you think that would help it if anything then, because more people who wanted to go see it would be the only ones who saw it, rather than if it was in theaters for 3 weeks, then someone might say, oh well, I might as well go see it, versus
Not
like the
to
dedicated.
throw stones at myself, but the type of people who are seeking out Science Saru stuff tend to be douchebags who
Yeah,
overly
fair.
criticize
You
things.
beat me to it.
That's all.
I
That's
don't
also
know
a
how to
fair
say
thing.
that.
I'm pointing
So-
at myself for the audio listeners.
Masterpiece, 8 out of 10. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
those
Thanks,
kind of
Happy.
people.
I think that might be some of it.
100%.
It might be. That's fair. I
It's like
think
the professor that never gives out 100s because like they're like nothing deserves 100.
There was 2 people in the theater when I saw this, and I was one of them. I should have said, I could have made a whale joke. I was both of them.
But yeah, all right. So I guess that wraps up our discussion of Inu-Oh. Again, I think most of us at least enjoyed this movie. The lowest score being a 7, and it was a strong 7 too. So definitely go watch it. Check it out. Miles, what are we watching or watching before our meeting on June 26th?
Yes. So we in third place we have Classmates. In second place we had Bloom Into You. And in third place we have
First place.
Third.
what did I say?
First
Third.
place.
Third.
In third place we have
And
Classmates again.
Yeah.
We have Asagao to Kase-san, which is
Woo!
Kase-san in the Morning Glories. So we have a nice movie to watch for next session.
And while you have the mic, Miles, since I just took it from you, why don't you take it back and explain to us exactly what we're nominating this week? Explain how it came up, what the bid is, maybe.
Yeah, so
for those of us that are
long
here.
time fans of the pod will know that we're missing something. We're missing our heart. We have our cool Soul and Jay, right? We got whatever the hell everyone else brings to the podcast.
Really? Really? Are you kidding me? You
Um,
Well, you bring
I-
the harassment.
I bring the bullying. Johnny brings the person who gets to be bullied.
Yeah. I'm like the punching bag, but not even the one that you hang up. It's on the one on the side that has like a bunch of holes in it from people already beating it up too much, you know.
Cat brings the hentai. Pat brings the uncle vibe we all know and love. But like the positive one. Like I've realized that uncles might have negative connotations to them.
Yeah.
But you just sort of like remind me of like one day you're going to be the world's best uncle at a barbecue, and it's just the vibe I get.
Thank you.
Don't.
And you're
I'm,
still gonna
this
be on
is
top.
this is off the top of my head. I'm
I
trying.
appreciate it.
And
That's a
then
compliment to
we
me,
have
people like
we have Pete. So
You can't.
Anyways.
That's my joke for Pat. Come on.
I
That's-
did it. I
that's
did the
weak.
thing.
That's weak.
Um,
That's weak.
and
Thanks, Pat.
anyways, we're missing
Welcome
Has, and so we're gonna have Has Tick Week, and everyone is going to nominate a show that they think can get Has back on the pod, because Has thinks he's too fucking cool for us. He said, "Y'all boring. I fucking hate you all. You bunch of white guys," and that is that's what he said. It's a real ass quote.
There are precisely 2 non-white people, and one that made fun of you for being the only white person that doesn't confuse. So
Bring it up with Has. And so we're trying to get Has back on the pod. So the goal is to nominate a show that you think will get Has back on the pod. That will make Has think we're cool again. That's the goal.
So what are you nominating, Miles, for Has
All,
Week?
with all of that being said, I'm nominating the Fruits of Grisai.
Ooh.
Oh yes! Oh man,
Because
that is a Has show and a half.
Because, it might not win because it sucks, but it will get Has back on the pod. And I feel like that might get it some votes.
You're right.
So-
It does suck.
Nice. Kat, what have you got?
So for Has Week, which I was just informed of like 2 hours ago, I was trying to work with Has on trying to figure out what I should do because me and Has historically do not watch the same shows. In fact, so much so that today before recording, he said, "Kat, I feel like you and I have just never connected. It seems." And I said,
What about the harem shows?
honestly,
It's such a terrible.
What about all the harem shows?
and honestly, and what I said was, honestly, I think so. I need help, bro. And he said, when you stare at Rosario Vampire, when you see if a flag breaks, my mental choices, they all have this aura of absurdity. You must question the very existence of what you're watching. And I took that to heart. And I run this by Has to make sure that this was the right thing. I'm nominating Mayo Chiki.
Oh, great show.
Yes.
Mayo Chicky?
Yeah, very
Mayo
fun
Chi-
show.
Okay.
The chicken?
Yeah, Mayo
Uh,
Chicken.
That's
Mayo
actually
chicken.
something-
Mayo Chicken is the
Huh.
that's what it's called.
Ironically, I
Sounds
make a dish
delicious.
that's mayo chicken. That's actually really fucking good. I know that's a very
And
white thing for me to
Do you
say.
bring
but,
it at
like,
barbecues?
I would if it was easy to transport, but it's more
See,
of
this
like
is why
a
you're not
sit down
invited
at
to
a
the
dinner
cookout.
table.
So we have comedy, romance, ecchi, cross-dressing, harem school. Mayo
Oh
Chi-
yeah,
Sounds
Yes.
like a perfect fit for Hans.
It's
Plus
fun.
Does.
wrestling.
It's a
Apparently.
very fun show.
Okay. Jay, what have you got for Has this week?
Okay, so mine is one that has a bit of a pedigree to it. Let me go ahead and sell you guys on this. Studios, Gynax, Madhouse, director, same director as Made in Abyss, seasons 1, 2, and the movie. Did the 2 good episodes of Charlotte. Director of Monster, key animation for Black Lagoon. I'm nominating Magical Shopping Arcade Abenobashi, which is an isekai parody from 2002.
That screams Has.
2002.
That's a great pick.
Mine's older than that, so
Nice. All right.
Okay, wait. The genres? Oh my god, this is so Has, Jay. Award-winning comedy, fantasy, ecchi are the genres. That's amazing.
There you go. All right. Pete, what about you?
yeah, I'm gonna pick the ecchi classic. That's even more classic than what Jay nominated. I'm going to go with Golden Boy.
Oh, that's
Hey.
accidentally on my to-watch list
I wonder why.
because I thought it was Golden Time.
It might be better.
You can remove it too. There you go.
Now it's on because maybe it'll win.
Maybe it'll win. There you go. All right. And for me, I'm going with something that's a little supernatural. Because Has likes that. A little bit of romance, maybe a little controversial romance too. We'll have to see. Again, none of us know because none of us have seen it yet. But I would love to have him watch, and it's also a movie, short, something easy for him to watch. We're gonna do the Tunnel of Summer, the Exit Goodbyes show that I've already been nominated.
This is
but
for you. This is not for Has.
It's for both of us.
It's
I think
for
Has would
you.
enjoy.
That's so cap.
You've been talking about this movie for 6 months.
I know I have, and has expressed interest in watching it.
Yes, he did say he would buy a Spirit flight on United.
Literally an hour ago, and along with the fact that I've talked to him about this before, and I think that genuinely do think that it is the genres that he does like as well. And I I hope it doesn't sing Yesterday for him away from this server, but maybe it does. We'll have to see. He tends to have a very interesting reaction to show stories like this, so that's why I would like to see it. And obviously, it is self-serving, but like, what? So, did you guys nominate shows you didn't want to watch?
That is so
that's
true.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
You didn't
that's
want to watch
literally-
anything.
that
that you
is
I don't
nominated.
have Golden Boy on my
literally the
plan
point
to
of this
watch,
week.
and I nominated it.
I would like to have. I don't know. I figured
Oh,
kill two
yeah.
birds with one stone. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong for thinking that, but
Johnny.
yeah,
What do you want to nominate?
Yeah, thank you, Miles, for remembering that I exist. You know, I figured being the punching bag was like just a joke, but I guess it's true.
No,
Did I actually skip
absolutely not.
Johnny? I'm
Yeah.
You
so
did.
sorry.
I'm here. I'm here to bully you, but I'm also here to support you, pal. So
He's here to
Whoops.
lift you up so you can get punched down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's didn't know my place. Anyways, yeah. So my show, I think for me, all the qualifications of a hash show are here. Made before the year 2010. Genres: award-winning, mystery, romance, sci-fi, suspense. Rating 17 plus. We know he's into that. My show is gonna be the show that was given to me for Secret Santa, Eden of the East, just because
Wait.
this is
Oh.
the most great. What did you think I was gonna nominate?
Yamada's
I
first
knew
time.
I knew you were
No,
gonna
not
nominate
that
this
one.
shit.
The other one. I would argue this show is even more insane than the show you nominated. Like, words cannot I did not do a good enough job of describing this show
I'm very
because it is
curious.
absolutely the most crazy show I've ever seen.
I think we've got a really good list here. A good diverse bag to potentially reawaken Has from his slumbers and his watch club foregoing, I suppose. And by the way, this will be for the July 10th recording session or meeting. So we got plenty of time to vote and decide before our next meeting on the 26th. But yeah, I think that'll wrap up Watch Club. So, Pete, take it away.
Yes, and if you have made this far and you want to support us, the best way to do so, like, comment, subscribe, leave a review on whatever platform you are watching and or listening to us on. Next week, we are looking forward to the summer season of seasonals, so be doing our preview of what we normally always do for the upcoming season. Looks like to be a pretty top-heavy season, I will say, but
that's kind.
yeah, I'll say top-heavy. There's 3 good shows next season, so there's 3. Looking forward to talking about that. Otherwise, if you are here for Watch Club, we will see you in 2 weeks for Kase-san and Morning Glories. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.